Welcome to Badwi Trades. Today we have a live show with the legend, Gareth Soloway. Gareth, welcome on board. What a week.
Well, thank you for having me, buddy. Great to be here.
What a week. What a week in crypto. Crazy, crazy, crazy. We thought we finished crazy. It's always new type of crazy with FTX and everything.
Oh, it's been insane. I mean, you think things got crazy enough with the Terra Luna collapse, with Voyager and Celsius, but nope, there's always more apparently.
There's always more, and you didn't expect it.
No.
Gareth, today I want to talk about obviously the FTX debacle. We're gonna talk about inflation probably with the Fed potential pivot, and we're gonna talk about your latest video about date and time of Bitcoin bottom. So let's start with that. We've seen a little bit of a bump with Bitcoin, so it's up to 17,000 from 15.5, I guess, up there. And the CPI number came a bit better for the United States. And yesterday, the producer PPI number came up positive, and they're starting to talk about slowing down interest rate hikes. Well, what do you stand on that?
Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we've seen commodities collapse. We've seen the labor market here in the U.S. Every day there's a new company that says they're going to lay off 10% of their workforce. And these are big companies. I mean, Meta, for instance, and some of these other ones. So it does tell us that the economy is weakening, which tends to then lower demand, which then obviously when there's less demand, prices can't stay as high. So it brings inflation back in. So I think that's what's happening. My biggest concern now is that inflation probably won't go back to 2%, which is what the Fed wants. So yes, it's going to come down, but you're going to see it kind of stuck around 3, 4, 5% for multiple years. And the negative to that is that it's going to be very hard for this Fed to stimulate with lowering rates or printing of money in the future. And we know that, especially with Bitcoin, every bear market has had the Fed printing money during it, except for this one. And that's the question now. Does that make it a worse or a longer bear market for crypto?
Okay. Well, now with the Dixie going down, do you expect I know a lot of S&P, Nasdaq, all are pumping now with the Dixie going down to 106 as you show now. What do you expect in the crypto, which is the higher risk one? I know the FTX changed everything, but do you expect us to have a bit of a pump to close to 30 before we?
So for Bitcoin, I honestly don't expect a move as high as 30. I think if we were to go back to 30 now, I think that you might actually have a bottom in crypto already. So I'm not anticipating that. I do actually think that the dollar did tag a significant low today. I don't know if it's possible for me to share my screen, but let me see if I can here. Yeah. I don't know if you can pop that in. There we go. So basically, you've seen this big drop ever since the CPI data last week and the PPI data today. Look at the fall on the US dollar. Now, one of the things I'm seeing in terms of the dollar is that we're now hitting some pretty significant support right here. All right. So again, pivot area here. You have another pivot area right here. There's a lot of technical support. So I'm actually in the camp that I think the dollar starts to bounce a little bit higher, maybe back to this area around 109.50. on the DXY, and then that'll be kind of where you see some further pressure on crypto in the next week or two, as well as stocks probably coming in from their big rally. And the rally in the S&P has been enormous, right? I mean, we've gone from on the S&P below 3,500 to now over 4,000. That's huge in terms of the move. So going to Bitcoin, basically, if we flip over to the Bitcoin chart, we had the breakdown here on FTX. I think this is the beginnings of kind of bearish consolidation. We could basically go back up, I would say, to the 18.8 area, 18.5, 18,500. There's a trend line here if you connect these lows through where you can see this line. So it wouldn't be abnormal to see us trade back up to that level. But as long as we stay below, you got to think that there's further downside in crypto. Again, I have it priced out 12, 13,000 high-end target. My main target now is around 9,000, where I think that's a likely bottom in the next 5 to 6 months.
Wow. Okay. Gareth, you were always in the camp that we were going lower. A lot of technical analysts out there refused to say that. They were going like, no, the bottom is in, the bottom is in. You were the one proven right. The way you calculated that from top to bottom, I found that amazing, and I shared it on my channel several times. Your bottom was around 13-14K. Now you're saying something else. So can you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the measured move was the first thing that I was talking about a while back, where if you take this initial move lower to this point here, that distance, then you do a measured move and it takes you to about 14,000 down here. Now we're almost there, but the only thing that kind of screwed that up is you had this long period of sideways consolidation. And the longer you consolidate on a technical basis, usually the farther it will fall, or the more pressure to the downside. So I do think, again, that 13,000 area is still the potential for my high-end target. But what concerns me more is the fact that FTX to me is basically like the Lehman Brothers of 2008. And one of the things that I was looking at the similarities between Lehman, when that bank collapsed in the US in 2008 in the Great Recession, and then how long did it take the market to bottom following the Lehman Brothers collapse, and then looking at the crypto markets and saying, okay, is the FTX collapse like a Lehman Brothers collapse? And the answer is it's very, very similar. One was an exchange, which is kind of like the crypto of a bank crypto. The other one was an actual bank. Both used leverage, to an extent where they should have. And then also both created the same level of fear in the market, where people, I mean, when Lehman collapsed, people really were running to banks and trying to take their money out. Here you have it everyone's trying to pull their money out from exchanges, right? So very, very similar. And if we go to the S&P 500 here, and this is super, super interesting to look, let's go all the way back to 2008, all right? So here we have 2008. This is where the Lehman Brothers collapse occurred. And what you can see is that the market did not bottom for a little while. In fact, you had a drop and then you had a little bit of a bounce, which could be what we're seeing in the crypto markets now. But then we rolled over and we didn't make a low until we got down to the March 09 low, March of 2009. And that actually was about 5 to 6 months from the Lehman collapse. So right away, I'm thinking, okay, human nature tends to repeat, if not rhyme, and here we have a same scenario where there's going to be liquidations, there's going to be forced selling. Think about all these funds that had over leverage involved in FTX. They now have to sell assets. They have to sell Bitcoin. They have to sell other things to try to get themselves back in alignment. That's going to keep pressure in the crypto market for a while. And then so you're thinking 5 to 6 months of downside. And then if you look at the percentage here, here's around 1,200. And we went to about 666. So it was about a 40 to 50% drop from the Lehman Brothers collapse to the low. So if we go to Bitcoin and we just think about that logically, you're now at a point where you're saying, okay, from the breakdown here, let's say 50% puts us at around 9,000, give or take. And that means that the low could be being put in between, I would say, 6 months from now. We have November, December, January, February, March. So between March and April would be the low pivot on the crypto market. So again, this is where I get that midterm cycle, kind of mid-level target. The other thing to keep in mind as well is that, markets need to flush through key levels. And the 10,000 level would be very key in breaking the back of many investors in crypto. And it's not that I want that to happen. It's just that's a normal thing in markets where they push investors to extremes where the investors give up. And if you look back at 2017, once we topped out and collapsed, there was a point where crypto and Bitcoin traded at 3,500 or so. And there was a lot of people that gave up on Bitcoin and said, it's not going to be anything big. It's done. It's over. CNBC took it off their ticker. They didn't even talk about it. And we haven't seen that in crypto yet. Everyone's still talking about Bitcoin. So it makes me think that we're not quite at a low just yet. Okay.
Question for you. Two things, actually. The 10K, I've always thought it's a psychological support line that it's very hard to break. And I know that there's a lot of volume orders around the 10K. That's why I never thought we might break it. You're telling me now that you reckon we might break it.
So what you'll notice around even numbers is that retail investors usually put their orders right at even numbers. So you're right. There's going to be a ton of retail orders, stop orders right at 10,000. And what you'll notice is that institutions generally want to flush those out, because what they'll do is they'll flush it below quickly, knowing that they're going to trigger a ton of stops, which means small investors get out. And then what they're going to do is they're going to have their hands out and they're going to be accumulating all of that Bitcoin below that even number. And then you'll see it very quickly go back above. But inevitably, markets work this way, where they look for where the majority of people are putting their stop orders, and they'll run those stops before they snap it back the other way.
Okay, that's great. Now, you mentioned the Lehman brother. I don't know. I have a feeling. I don't live in the U.S. I live in Australia, but I have a feeling like with FTX, a bit different. Is the Lehman didn't get a bailout. I don't know, but FTX, I feel Sam Bankman-Fried is still not in jail because of his connections. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I mean, Lehman Brothers didn't get a bailout. The other banks did, right? Lehman
100%.
Brothers actually went bankrupt. It was kind of like the one that the regulators allowed as a warning sign, I think, to the other banks. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if things emerge with FTX where SBF might end up in legal trouble, and there might be potentially jail time associated with it. So I know it seems kind of crazy. It's such an insane situation. But considering he had these other companies that were feeding money to each other, it gets very complicated. And there are legalities there that he might have broken. And I'm sure the regulators are going to do their due diligence and find this out. And they will absolutely make an example of him to send an example to the rest of the crypto market to not do these shady things. In addition, I think we have to realize that this to me is the trigger that will bring regulation into the industry probably within 6 months, which, by the way, that also coincides with my low of 5 to 6 months. I think in 5 to 6 months, there is regulation in the crypto markets. Everyone didn't want it. Now I think everyone's like, please give us some regulation so we know that our money is actually safe in the crypto industry. And I think that's so important. I mean, I know for myself, I'm scared, to leave money on the exchanges. You just don't know. And if you have significant amounts of your net worth on the exchanges, that's just scary. And it's you can't be doing it.
Yeah, like I was listening to Kevin O'Leary. He goes like, I'm flying to Washington right now. I'm meeting with people. We want regulations now. Like all the institutions that we were looking at, now they want to sit aside. They don't want to touch it.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, and that's one of the keys too, is that you had Celsius, you had Voyager, you had other ones where a lot of small investors got hurt, but it's when the big players get hurt, they fly to Washington and they actually put pressure on these politicians to get that regulation going. So it's a shame that it took this to get to that point, but I do think that this will be the triggering point for regulation in the crypto markets.
No, 100%. Gareth, with everything happening regarding the Fed, like we know it's they're gonna start pivoting. If they pivot, do you think that will make a decent move in the Bitcoin and the crypto asset?
So this is tricky, because if you look at the CPI and the PPI data, which allows the Fed to start relaxing the hikes because it's showing lower inflation, we've seen the stock market rip higher. But crypto hasn't really. I mean, we've gone back up, about 17,000, but it's not much of a bounce compared to, let's look at this chart. Here's Bitcoin, right? So this is Bitcoin. And then look at the S&P 500, right? Oops, that's not the S&P. Bear with me. Look at this move on the S&P, right? So it's night and day. They're almost opposites. And the key here is that with the stock market, it's all focused on inflation. What is the Fed going to do? Is the Fed going to stop hiking? With crypto, it was that narrative. And then you had FTX taking the headlines away, and now everyone's scared. And so you really, this was a horrendous fumble, because crypto would probably be at 25,000 right now on Bitcoin if it wasn't for FTX.
No, 100%. And usually crypto bounces faster than the S&P 500. In this case, it didn't happen. It was just kept on steady. The FTX came through. I didn't even look at the elections in America during the FTX. We were all focused on FTX. Yeah. I didn't even know who won till like a while after. I was like, what is this?
It's crazy, man. It is absolutely nuts. You're right. I mean, everything got hijacked by this FTX situation. And the biggest thing to me is like, who else is over leveraged? Isn't this gonna now kind of showcase their lack of liquidity, their need, and you're going to have more bankruptcies. There's no doubt about it in my mind.
and that was what I believe is going to trigger the final flush out. I think the liquidation of a couple of others. We already started seeing cracks in some exchanges, and and we know he was trying to buy Voyager and BlockFi, and I don't know what happened there. Like it's a mess. It's literally he left a big mess behind him.
It is.
And then you have the miners capitulation, which is the next thing that is going to happen at these prices. Miners are losing money. So when they start dumping harder, that's going to affect, I guess, that's going to be the final leg down, I believe.
I 100% agree. I think that's exactly right.
Gareth, it was an absolute pleasure. It was a real pleasure meeting you in person for the first time. I've been a huge follower for a long time. A couple of people are asking about the PPI. After the positive PPI, will Bitcoin and the market go out in the coming days? I believe you answered that. It might go up a little bit, but the final leg down is within 5 to 6 months.
Yeah. So that's what I'm looking at this point. I mean, the beauty of it is, even though no one wants to see Bitcoin sub 10 or at 12 or 13, like, remember, bear markets give you the most opportunity out there. That's where millionaires are made, right? If millionaires aren't made buying 65,000 on Bitcoin when it's gone up from 20 straight to 65, it's waiting and saying to yourself, is my thesis for Bitcoin's, use case still valid? And then, if I liked it at 65, why don't I like it at 12 or 13 or 14 or 15? And now I can buy it before maybe that next bull run. And it doesn't mean you're going to get the exact low. I certainly don't with my investments. Oftentimes they'll go lower, but it's buying it close to the low, dollar cost averaging, and then ultimately seeing the bigger picture coming.
A question for you. I know you've started nibbling on Bitcoin. What are the prices you're looking at on Bitcoin, and if there's anything else you're looking at? I know Ethereum, you had a buy order at 800. It didn't get hit a while. Right. As you know, I follow you
That's right.
very
I see
closely.
That.
so tell us, what are you looking at the moment for you?
For me, it's, Ethereum is definitely one of those where, like, if we bring up the chart here, let's take a look at the chart on Ethereum, is that it is consolidating below a key level. So we want to be aware of that. If it recaptures this line, that would be bullish. But if it continues down, my level where I'll start to accumulate, see these little pivot points right here before the big bull run, probably right around 650 or so. If it got down that low, I would definitely be starting to hodl some in that range. I'm a big believer in Ethereum and Bitcoin. The other coins you got to be careful on. They're great for swing trading, but you don't know. I mean, look at what's happening to Solana. Look at what happens to some of these other ones. You just don't know. So you got to be really careful with them in terms of hodling them. Trading, fine. Be careful on hodling them.
Yes, especially in a bear market. I always stick to safety in bear market. You need to survive. You need to survive in bear market. That's the key. Gareth, if people want to find you, I know your YouTube. I'm gonna share your YouTube links, and I'm gonna share your Twitter links. Anywhere else they can find you?
I would say verifiedinvestingcrypto.com is the best place. I mean, it's an amazing place to kind of come. I give my trade signals. I give all my analysis there. So I think that would be the best place at this point to go. And I think, that's where to find me. Otherwise, on Twitter is a great spot as well. All right,
Gareth, really thank you for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure meeting you in person. A huge fan again, and hopefully we'll see you soon later on in this bear market.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, buddy. Great talking to you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.
That's it. Gareth Soloway شباب وصبايا. كذا حدا كان عم يسألني إنه ليه ما ترجمتها. ما بقدر ترجم لايف صراحة. ما عندي القدرة إني ترجم لايف، بس رح ترجم المقابلة كاملة بعدين رح ارجع ترجم المقابلة كاملة وحطها على اليوتيوب كمان للكل يشاهدها. بشكركم مرة تانية و please like and subscribe للchannel وبشوفكم قريبا.